the Indian Ocean as we look to comity, commerce and culture.
We must commit ourselves to an order based on the rights of all states to the freedom of navigation.
Our vision for the Indian Ocean region, therefore, is to preserve its organic unity while advancing cooperation.
I'm heartened to see that as countries of the Indian Ocean region, we have realized the importance of our ocean.
And so what I like about this conference is that it says, in the early part of the 21st century, let us try to bring back the idea, the significance of the Indian Ocean region and use it culturally, use it politically, and crucially use it as a way of integrating different countries that have a lot in common.
Good evening, Sin Chao and Namaskar. It's my honor and privilege this evening to welcome the distinguished dignitaries to the 3rd Indian Ocean Conference on Building Regional Architectures, hosted by India Foundation in collaboration with Diplomatic Academy of Vietnam, RSIS Singapore, and BIIS Bangladesh. May I first invite His Excellency Ranil Wickramasinghe to the dais to be escorted by Shri Shaurya Dawal. May I invite Shaurya Dawal? Member Board of Governors, India Foundation, to escort the Honorable Prime Minister. I now invite His Excellency Pham Binh Minh, Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Foreign Affairs, Vietnam, to the dais to be escorted by Admiral Shekhar Sinha, Trustee, India Foundation. I now invite His Excellency Upendra Yadav to the dais to be escorted by Shri Shakti Sinha, Director, Nehru Museum, Memorial Museum and Library. It's my pleasure now to invite Her Excellency Srimati Sushma Swaraj, Honorable External Affairs Minister, India, to be escorted by Dr. Sonu Trivedi. Honorable Minister. Yeah. We shall be joined by His Excellency Dr. Vivian Balakrishna a little later this evening. Before that, let me now request Secretary East, Ministry of External Affairs, Ms. Preeti Saran, to deliver the welcome address.
Good evening, Namaskar, Sinchao, Honorable Prime Minister of Sri Lanka, Shri Ranil Wickremesinghe, Honorable Deputy Prime Minister and Foreign Minister of Vietnam, Mr. Pham Binh Minh, Honorable Deputy Prime Minister of Nepal, Shri Upendra Yadav, Honorable External Affairs Minister of India, Srimati Sushma Swaraj, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, the Ministry of External Affairs, Government of India, is indeed honored and delighted to partner with India Foundation and other partner institutions to this third chapter of the Indian Ocean Conference. And I extend a very warm welcome to you on behalf of the Ministry of External Affairs, Government of India. I also take this opportunity to congratulate Shri Ram Madhav Ji and his entire team at India Foundation and the partner institutions from Singapore, from Sri Lanka, from Bangladesh, from Vietnam, for bringing together such a scintillating galaxy of leaders, academics, thinkers, analysts, and speakers to take forward the discussions that were held in 2016 for the first time in Singapore, followed by the second Indian Ocean Conference in Sri Lanka last year on issues of common concern to us in maritime domain of the Indian Ocean. In a very short span of time, just within 3 years, the Indian Ocean Conference has established itself as the foremost forum to lead the discussions on the importance of the Indian Ocean for peace, for prosperity, for security and development of the littoral states of the Indian Ocean region. This year's participation exceeds previous conferences, and I believe apart from the distinguished presence of the Honorable Prime Minister of Sri Lanka, we have 15 other ministers from 43 participating countries, 48 speakers at this conference today. The importance that we attach to the Indian Ocean Conference can be gauged by the fact of the continuous presence of our External Affairs Minister, Srimati Sushma Swaraj, to all the 3 conferences. In 2016, she was virtually present there through video conferencing. And of course, last year, she was there in Sri Lanka personally, and then she's here today to just give you the importance that Government of India attaches. And we are therefore delighted with the presence of so many dignitaries present here on the dais. And of course, a very special thank you to Vietnam and to Honorable Mr. Pham Binh Minh, Deputy Prime Minister and Foreign Minister of Vietnam, and to Vietnam and the Diplomatic Academy of Vietnam for kindly partnering with us for the first time in this conference. Our vision of the Indian Ocean is driven by our Prime Minister, Shri Narendra Modi's Sagar, which is security and growth for all in the region, which is in keeping with his mantra of Sabka Saath, Sabka Vikas, which means together we develop with all, and Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, which is that the world is one family. The Indian Ocean is at the heart of Asia, and its growth story, the littoral states today, which are one of the most dynamic economies in the world, are not only the engine of growth for themselves, but will be the engine of growth for others in the region, for the rest of the world as well. The Indian Ocean, of course, remains the busiest waterways connecting us from the shores of Africa to the entire Asia, and it is therefore imperative that our region remains peaceful, it develops sustainably, respecting marine ecology, and therefore it is equally important that it follows a rules-based system with respect for international law, protecting the interests of all states, big or small, in the region. In fact, the region today is well placed not only to follow these imperatives, but also to set the norms for a rule-based international order. And it is in this context, the significance of the fact that this conference is being held in Vietnam shows that we have a common vision and a common desire for peace and prosperity for the entire Indo-Pacific region. Once again, I'd like to extend a very warm welcome to all the dignitaries, all the speakers and participants to this conference. I'm certain the discussions that you've had today in the course of this conference will provide new ideas of building a regional architecture, and take this opportunity to once again thank you all for your kind presence. Thank you.
May I invite Her Excellency Srimati Sushma Swaraj, Minister for External Affairs, India, to address the delegates and distinguished guests. Madam.
Namaskar, Xin Chao, and a very good evening. His Excellency, the Prime Minister of Sri Lanka, His Excellency, the Deputy Prime Minister and the Foreign Minister of Vietnam, His Excellency, the Deputy Prime Minister of Nepal, Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. It gives me great pleasure to be here with you all. At the outset, I would like to express my heartfelt gratitude to the government of Vietnam for their kind support in hosting this event. My thanks also to the India Foundation and its partner institutions from Singapore, Sri Lanka, and Bangladesh for organizing this conference. I'm particularly happy that the third Indian Ocean Conference is taking place in Hanoi. We had the honor to host His Excellency Prime Minister Phuc, along with the leader from ASEAN, for the ASEAN-India Commemorative Summit in January this year. This was followed by the state visit of His Excellency Quang to India in March. We agreed to further strengthen our cooperation in the maritime domain, including on anti-piracy, security of sea lanes, and exchange of white shipping information. We also agreed on the importance of the early conclusion of an ASEAN-India Maritime Transport Cooperation Agreement. In this context, we intend to accelerate the establishment of direct shipping routes between the seaports of India and Vietnam. It will be appropriate if I mention this, that India and Vietnam are connected not only by the common waters that wash our shores, but also by a shared vision for peace and prosperity. Hanoi is therefore a particularly appropriate setting for us to discuss developments in the Indian Ocean and the Indo-Pacific region. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, in an interdependent world characterized by enhanced economic and trade linkages, the importance of sustainable use of our ocean resources cannot be overstated. For us in India, the seas around us have nurtured our links of commerce and culture with our extended neighborhood over millennia. This is evident in our shared cultural ties stretching from Africa to Asia. It should come as no surprise, therefore, that in Indian mythology, the Indian Ocean was known as Ratnakar, that means the creator of gems. The waters of this great ocean were considered as the source of riches and prosperity. The economies of its littoral states depended directly and indirectly on the Indian Ocean. Today, it does not just support trade, but sustains livelihoods. With the eastward shift of the engines of the global economy, there can be no doubt that the Indian Ocean is at the center of the emerging age of Asia. The economic importance of the Indian Ocean and its vital role in the continued prosperity and development of the littoral nations is well established. This region is host to the world's busiest waterways, and 3/4 of that traffic is headed for destinations beyond our region. As an important trade and energy gateway, carrying half the world's container shipment, 1/3 of its bulk cargo traffic, and 2/3 of oil shipments, the Indian Ocean clearly assumes importance well beyond its immediate shores and its littorals. Excellencies, nurturing a climate of peace and stability in this region is therefore an important priority for our foreign policy. We believe that despite our diversity, the challenges we face are quite similar. Our vision for the region is one of cooperation and collective action. Friends, we cannot tap the bounty of the Indian Ocean without ensuring maritime peace and stability. Economic prosperity and maritime security go hand in hand. Security is an all-encompassing concept and includes traditional, non-traditional, and newly emerging threats. These include maritime terrorism, smuggling, transnational crimes, drug trafficking, illegal immigration, illegal unreported and unregulated fishing, piracy, unregulated private maritime security companies, and proliferation of sensitive items. It is further compounded by natural disasters, oil spills, and effects of climate change to which our region is highly prone to. Friends, it is self-evident, therefore, that those who live in this region bear the primary responsibility for peace, stability, and prosperity in the Indian Ocean. It is equally valid that it is only through collective action that we can meet these challenges. It is in this context that I wish to underline that we see ASEAN as central to the regional maritime architecture. This was recognized by our leaders during the ASEAN-India Commemorative Summit in January this year. In the Delhi Declaration issued to mark this occasion, we reiterated the importance of maintaining and promoting peace, stability, and maritime safety and security, and freedom of navigation and overflight in the region. We support the lawful uses of the seas and unimpeded lawful maritime commerce, and to promote peaceful resolutions of disputes in accordance with universally recognized principles of international law, notably the 1982 United Nations Convention on the Laws of the Sea, as we call it, UNCLOS. Friends, the diverse nature of the challenges before us require effective partnerships, both at the regional as well as multilateral level. India considers the Indian Ocean Rim Association, IORA, as an important instrument for achieving peace and security in the region. We commend Indonesia's leadership in conceptualizing the first ever IORA Leaders Summit in Jakarta in March last year, which resulted in the Jakarta Concord. This has infused fresh momentum into IORA activities. We are supportive of the invigoration of IORA activities, including blue economy and renewable energy. The focus of the IORA on maritime safety and security promotes a shared understanding of maritime issues and helps develop cooperative mechanisms. Taken together, these will also enhance the regional HADR capacity in cases of natural disasters and crises. We share a common vision for the Indo-Pacific. Excellencies, in March 2015, Prime Minister Modi put forward the concept of Sagar, as Preeti mentioned, proposing a holistic vision for India's engagement with this region. Sagar in Hindi means ocean. But Prime Minister Modi's vision is that in this century, Sagar should stand for security and growth for all in the region. In its implementation, this approach includes: 1, projects to promote hinterland linkages and strengthen regional connectivity. 2, making South Asia to Southeast Asia, that is Act East policy, and to the Gulf, that is Think West policy. And 3, playing an active and constructive role in strengthening regional maritime security. Allow me to elaborate briefly on my country's approach to each of these three elements. The first part is our focus on developing hinterland linkages and regional connectivity. Under our government's Sagarmala project, initiatives we have taken include: 1. Building new ports and modernizing old ones. 2. Developing inland waterways. And 3. Hinterland development are all aimed at our robust maritime logistics infrastructure. Our eastern seaboard is a particular focus and can help recreate an integrated hub and spoke model for regional connectivity in the Bay of Bengal. Carrying this focus beyond our borders, India is today devoting more resources and assigning greater priority to building connectivity, context, and cooperation in our immediate neighborhood. This is manifest in projects in sectors ranging from rail and road transport to power generation and transmission, from port and waterways transport to educational and health exchanges. The second element is the expanded interpretation of what constitutes our neighborhood. This is reflected in the renewed emphasis on our Act East policy and the new Think West policy towards West Asia and Gulf region. Our Act East policy is at the heart of our eastward orientation and ties in with our broader approach to the Indo-Pacific. Over the years, our approach to the region has matured into a broader strategic engagement with the ASEAN and its related frameworks like ARF, EAS, and ADMM+, as also with countries further east, including Japan, South Korea, Australia, and the Pacific Islands. We therefore accord high priority to key infrastructure projects such as the Kaladan Multimodal Transport Project that links to Sitwe Port, and the trilateral highway that will extend to Thailand. Our recent agreement with Indonesia to develop port infrastructure in Sabang is yet another step in this direction. We are also looking towards a more sustainable future for this region by collaborating with our regional partners on blue economy projects, harnessing renewable energy, investing in development of desalination technologies, harvesting the biodiversity of the oceans, and sustainably mining the ocean depths for marine minerals. In all these engagements, we are guided by the development and security priorities of our partners. Our approach is based on interdependence rather than dominance or narrow reciprocal considerations. We support responsible and transparent debt financing matched by responsible lending practices. We understand that following universally recognized international norms, transparency, openness, financial responsibility, and promoting a sense of local ownership are essential for better and more sustainable development outcomes. Coming to the third element, contributing to regional maritime security. We are working to ensure the safety and security of maritime traffic through the ocean by strengthening skills and logistics of our Indian Ocean neighbors. We are helping our maritime neighbors set up their coastal surveillance networks for developing shared maritime domain awareness. We have signed wide shipping agreements with a number of countries. In addition, our ships have undertaken coordinated patrolling and EEZ surveillance on the request of our partners. Another element of ensuring safety and navigation in the IOR has been the hydrographic support provided to our partners to chart the waters of the region. This has been augmented with a large training and capacity building effort. In addition to the ASEAN and IORA mechanisms I spoke of earlier, the Indian Ocean Naval Symposium, IUNS, of which India is a founding member, offers a broad-based platform for developing greater synergies with the navies in the region. We also have well-established mechanisms like Regional Cooperation Agreement on Combating Piracy and Armed Robbery, and Contact Group on Piracy of Somalia, and anti-piracy patrols in the Gulf of Aden at the western extremity of the ocean. Friends, looking beyond our practical day-to-day cooperation, it is important to build an overarching vision for the Indian Ocean region. Prime Minister Modi recently spoke of his vision of a free and inclusive Indo-Pacific. The Indian Ocean is a central component of this free and inclusive Indo-Pacific. Friends, the Indian Ocean is a region where some of the largest and smallest nations of the world have coexisted in harmony. The harmony is not only because of economic and cultural commonalities, but also of ideological and civilizational commonalities. This is why I'm so happy to see such a wide canvas of participation here, with delegates not only from Indian Ocean littorals, including South Asia, ASEAN, West Asia, and Africa, but also from China, Japan, Republic of Korea, Australia, US, UK, and Pacific Islands, Papua New Guinea, among others. This is precisely the collective approach that is required in order to truly develop this region to its fullest potential. This region cannot be only a growth engine. It has to be a community of ideas and commitments. We have to commit to the ideas of a rules-based order, equality under international law, peaceful resolution of disputes, and equitable distribution of the benefits of globalization. I hope that over the next few days, this conference will provide an opportunity to exchange our ideas on these issues. I wish you all very fruitful deliberations. Thank you. Dhanyavad. Kaman. Thank you.
Thank you, Her Excellency, for an inspiring and visionary address, setting the tone for the conference on building regional architectures. I now have the pleasure of welcoming His Excellency, Dr. Vivian Balakrishna, Minister of Foreign Affairs, Singapore, to this inaugural session. Welcome. May I invite you, sir, to deliver an address to the guests and the dignitaries.
Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe from Sri Lanka. Can I call you my sister? Minister Sushma Swaraj from India. Of course, my often co-conspirator, Deputy Prime Minister of Vietnam, Pham Binh Minh. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, it's a pleasure for me to be here, literally fresh off the plane, and that's why I was a few minutes late. I beg your indulgence. And to be here on the third run of this Indian Ocean Conference, and to be, I remember Prime Minister Ranil, you also have been here on every single conference. I think this illustrates the importance that we ascribe to this topic. Singapore is privileged to be a founding co-partner of the Indian Ocean Conference, which we believe will help shape a common vision for the Indian Ocean and a subject of increasingly vital importance over the years. It helps to start taking a longer-term look back, and in fact, over 3,000 years, the Indian Ocean has been a platform for the exchange of knowledge, culture, religion, and across the enormous diversity of our states. South Asian influences in language and religion born across the waves of the Indian Ocean are clearly evident here in Southeast Asia. Even today, we see the legacy of Sanskrit in our languages, the influence of Hinduism, Buddhism, and Islam in all our belief systems. The overland Silk Route has been more famous historically, but actually, the Indian Ocean has also been a crucial conduit for maritime trade. The first wave of globalization that was conducted in this part of the world linked the East African coast to the Arabian Peninsula, South Asia, Southeast Asia, and across the South China Sea, obviously to China. And this thriving trade has been chronicled by travelers like Marco Polo and even Batuta in the 13th and 14th century. The Indian Ocean today is even more vital, and it enjoys a privileged location at the crossroads of global trade, connecting the major engines of international economy from all the way from the North Atlantic all the way to the Asia Pacific. I want to emphasize this point called the maritime advantage. We live in a time when many people think of connectivity in terms of air, in terms of digital fiber optics, in terms of high-speed rails and overland routes. But it's worthwhile remembering that even today, take the average container ship with a capacity of 20,000 TEUs. If you were to unload that one ship and put each container onto a train, the train that you would need to move the containers from one container ship would be 100 kilometers long. For those of you who are interested in numbers, that's even longer than the Panama Canal. So the point is, even in today's modern day and age, the maritime advantage is still unsurpassed. And there's another reason why the maritime dimension is so important. See, if you take a flight, you've got to traverse air traffic control, you've got to take instructions, you need to seek approvals. On the seas, in the high seas, and even in territorial waters, exercising a right of innocent passage, a ship can go literally anywhere at once in the world. It is point-to-point transport, unrestricted, complete freedom of navigation. And again, this is a key advantage that all the other modalities of transport do not offer us. And it is therefore not a surprise that the United Nations Conference on Trade and Development, UNCTAD, estimates that 80% of global trade by volume and 70% of its value is transported by sea. And all of us know that a significant, in fact, a preponderance of that traffic actually flows through the Indian Ocean. Just another example, 40% of the world's oil supply travels through the entryways in and out of the Indian Ocean. So there's no question that the Indian Ocean is of strategic, crucial importance to all of us. And one of the central questions of our time, and I think that occupies the minds of this distinguished audience here tonight, is how are we going to address both the opportunities as well as the challenges that will present ourselves in this vital arena. Now, before I go further, let me declare my interest by saying that Singapore is a tiny city-state, a port, which is actually, if you look at the map of the world, we are actually the southernmost tip of the Eurasian continent, which, by the way, is also connected to South Asia and to India. So Singapore is 1 degree 15 minutes north of the equator. If you're going to take a ship from India and you want to go to China, or even if you want to get to the Pacific coast of the United States, the shortest route from the Indian Ocean is through the Straits of Malacca, pivot around Singapore, through the South China Sea, and then the Pacific Ocean. Singapore is also unique because our trade volume is 3 times our GDP. No other political entity has that ratio. Hence, my comments reflect by definition, the perspective of an open trading port that lies at the pivot point of this vital way. So we approach it, and let me share a couple of principles which shape our views of the Indian Ocean, which are in fact drawn also from our experience being at the tip of the Straits of Malacca, and also our more recent experience in the South China Sea. The first thing is that we in Singapore, and indeed I think I can speak on behalf of ASEAN, we believe that we need an open and inclusive regional architecture. And the key words there are open and inclusive. architecture. We want to have substantive relations, and we want to remain interconnected with the rest of the world, and as Minister Shushma has said, an interdependent world with mutual investments flowing in all directions. We do not want to be forced to make false choices, and we do not believe that it would be to anyone's benefit for the region to come under the exclusive dominance of any single great power, or maybe just as bad, to be split into rival blocs and to be an arena for proxy wars. Like the countries of the broader Indian Ocean region, ASEAN, as an association of 10 very diverse countries, we will always be affected by what's happening around us. And our short history in the last 5 decades have brought home this point very pointedly. The challenge is whether we allow these external events and the overall strategic change in global balance of power to overwhelm us, to divide us, or whether, in fact, we raft our destinies together and build a more stable raft, or even better still, a maritime-going ship, which will keep us out of danger and at the same time gives us sufficient ballast to withstand the waves and the winds that will come along our way. That's why we have always sought to give everyone a greater stake in our region and a greater stake in mutual interdependence and mutual prosperity. That's why ASEAN has always engaged external parties throughout our history, starting with the post-ministerial conferences with our dialogue partners in 1978, the ASEAN Regional Forum in 1994, the ASEAN +3 in 1997, and the East Asia Summit in 2005. When I meet superpowers, my usual line to them goes like this: it is in your own long-term interests. This is addressed to the superpower. It is in your own long-term interests to see ASEAN succeed. Ultimately, in the decades to come, ASEAN will become your biggest trading partner and will be a greater and more compelling zone for your investments. And the key concept, therefore, is interdependence. And we believe that this is the way to secure the peace and to maintain prosperity in our region by promoting interdependence and to demonstrate to everyone in reality, on the ground, that we gain more by working together and trading with one another and investing in one another rather than engaging in zero-sum games and superpower rivalries. We hope for win-win outcomes. The opposite scenario of being divided into rival blocs and to insist on national independence, engaging in zero-sum competition, and becoming part of proxy wars is not the way for peace and prosperity. So, economic and political interdependence is our mantra. This brings me to my second point today, which is that ASEAN has always sought a regional architecture that articulates a concrete and coherent and consistent economic strategy. In other words, trade is strategy. And we must look for every opportunity to facilitate trade, facilitate mutual investments, and to enhance connectivity and to invest in infrastructure. The global consensus for free trade, for economic integration, actually is fraying. All of us who have to stand for elections, I think many of us in this room have elections coming in the next year or two, will realize that you can no longer stand at a political rally and say you stand for free trade and expect everyone to subscribe to it. The truth is, we live in an age of anxiety, and in a sense, the case for free trade has not been adequately made. In an age when people are worried about competition, are worried about job insecurity, and are worried about inequality. Some sectors would see free trade as lowering levels of protection for the most vulnerable, as increasing the prospects of inequality within a society. And therefore, the point here is that politicians who want to make the argument for free trade will have to demonstrate to their domestic electorates that this is a recipe that creates jobs, that maintains economic relevance and competitiveness, and also maintains peace between countries. What I'm saying is that this is actually a political argument, and a political argument that has to be made and decided by domestic electorates. In our case, in the case of Singapore, because, as I said, our trade volume is 3 times our GDP, it's a bit easier for me in Singapore to make the case that we cannot afford to build walls and build protectionist barriers, because Singapore clearly would not be viable in a world without free trade. Nevertheless, we believe that free trade and economic integration has to go beyond Singapore, it has to include ASEAN. And looking beyond ASEAN, now you understand why we are so focused on the RCEP, the Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership. If we succeed, and we hope to settle this by the end of the year, the RCEP will include all 10 members of ASEAN, plus India, China, Japan, Korea, Australia, and New Zealand. This puts together about 45% of the world's population, 30% of the world's GDP. It'll be the single largest free trade zone. In fact, one of the side points I've tried to make is that if we get the RCEP right, and we continue to look and build bridges, economic bridges to Africa, to South America, and across the Pacific, to the US, Mexico, Canada, in effect, we will succeed in the long run, hopefully, possibly, with a free trade area of the Indo-Pacific. And that's why this effort, these difficult negotiations over the next few months are so important. My third point, after economics, is really a rules-based world order. And this again comes from the perspective of a small, tiny city-state. By definition, we cannot believe that might is right. We have to believe in a rules-based world order with multilateral institutions setting multilateral rules and having access to peaceful resolution of disputes. In the maritime field, you will understand, therefore, why, for us, UNCLOS 1982, the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea, is such a sacred document. It keeps the sea lanes free, open, peaceful, and allows even small states like Singapore and Sri Lanka to have a say, an equal say, even when we are dealing with much bigger political and economic entities. So let me conclude by making the point that the Indian Ocean has always been a vital artery for peace and prosperity. It has become even more so now. The maritime dimension has always been important, and even in this modern day and age, perhaps even more important. And we need these 3 ingredients: a free and open regional and international architecture. We need to have a clear economic agenda, and we need to have a rules-based world order. If we can do this, then we believe the Indian Ocean will be another cradle for a new burst of energy, a new golden age for all the countries, big and small, represented here. Thank you all very much.
Thank you. Thank you, His Excellency, for an invigorating address on maritime advantage and strategy. Thank you, Honorable Minister. May I now invite His Excellency Upendra Yadav, Deputy Prime Minister and Minister for Health and Population, Nepal, to give his address. Honorable Sir.
His Excellency, Prime Minister of Sri Lanka, Her Excellency Sushma Swaraj, External Affairs Minister of India, His Excellency Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Foreign Affairs Vietnam, and distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, I am really feel pleasure here to be among you. I want to thank India Foundation and the partners of this organizing this conference. The Indian Ocean is the world's third largest body of water, covering about 1/5 of the world total ocean area. The Indian Ocean region cuts across a vast span of territory that directly affects both the global economy and some territory about 32 nations in the region. The Indian Ocean is the fulcrum of global trade and commerce, with nearly half of the world's large number of commercial vessels and 2/3 of the global oil traveling through its sea lanes. The region boasts some of the fastest growing economies on the earth and is home to 1/4 of the globe's population. 500 million of whom still lack reliable access to power. The Indian Ocean region is also one of the most complex regions in the world in human terms. It reposes significant endowments of strategic natural resources, tremendous ecological and human diversity, and resplendent cultural and civilizational traditions, making it arguably a pivotal harbinger to regional and global peace, security, and stability. We believe that boosting the economic integration will lead to sustainable and inclusive growth. This region has undergone fundamental changes in its regional organization and power structure, especially in this 21st century. However, a wide range of community building initiatives and projects have transformed the dynamics of regional institutions building and major power relations in the region. While the region offers unprecedented opportunity, it also confronts a myriad of security challenges, including terrorism, transportational crime, trafficking in persons, illicit drugs, climate change and environmental degradation, pollutions, and destruction of biological diversities. And to combat these challenges, my country, Nepal, is ready to cooperate. We need to bolster cooperation and issues such as conflict resolution, transnational crimes, maritime security, and nuclear proliferation. Adoption of region-wide production standard, increased openness and technological progress, improvement in access, diversification of energy sources, and technological advances in agriculture production for food security and eradication of poverty, that all human beings can lead lives free from hunger, extreme poverty, and inequality, and the threat posed by anthropogenic climate change. Protecting the climate and limiting global warming will be possible only if we quickly act to decarbonize our economies. Carbon dioxide is the greenhouse gas that contributes the most of anthropogenic climate change. The ecological crisis of the present age, climate change, the overloading of ecosystem, shortage of raw materials, a species extinction call for a generation spanning conception of justice. On the socio-cultural side, more focus should be given to deeper collaboration on natural disaster relief and assistance, managing the adverse impact of climate change and ensuring health security and delivery of tangible benefits to citizens in these regions will be the most obtainable. The notion of building regional architectures refers to a set of regional institutions, mechanisms, and arrangements that together provides necessary function for regional cooperation. It is a reasonably coherent network of regional organizations, institutional fabrics, bilateral and multilateral arrangements, dialogue forums, and other relevant mechanisms that work collectively for regional peace, stability, and shared prosperity and a higher quality of life. Our desire for a common vision, our enduring commitment to this region, and our shared goals of promoting peace, security, trade, commerce, stability, and prosperity, and a sustainable and open architecture across the Indian Ocean. Joining in this common endeavor and through our collective leadership, we can be the model in this century. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, His Excellency, for focusing on challenges and opportunities. Thank you. May I now invite His Excellency Pham Binh Minh, Deputy Prime Minister and Minister for Foreign Affairs, Vietnam, to give his address.
Excellencies, Prime Minister, Deputy Prime Minister, Ministers, distinguished guests and colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, let me, on behalf of the Vietnamese government, warmly welcome all of you to Hanoi for the third Indian Ocean Conference under the theme of Building Regional Architectures to discuss strategic and economic issues pertinent to Asia's security, peace, and prosperity. The Indian and Pacific Oceans are home to some of the greatest and most ancient civilizations in the world. They are connected not only by their waters, but also by regular and strong interactions in many areas. Today, these ties are stronger than ever. The heightened level of exchanges in economic, political, and cultural areas are becoming new drivers to transform the Asian century into an Indo-Asia-Pacific century. Indeed, the Indo-Asia-Pacific region is increasingly emerging as a unified entity. Your large presence at this conference is another testimony to this fact. We all are stakeholders in the emerging Indo-Asia-Pacific region. However, it is undeniable that our region is facing multiple traditional and non-traditional challenges. Power politics, extreme nationalism, protectionism, anti-globalization are but to name a few. Despite these challenges, aspirations for an Indo-Asia-Pacific of peace, stability, and prosperity are becoming stronger. Against this backdrop, the question posed to us is, how do we envisage viable forms of regional architectures so as to bring about concrete security and developmental benefits for all of us? Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to offer my thoughts from the Vietnamese perspective on the matter of building the regional architectures. To advance its own national interests, Vietnam is simultaneously pursuing common interests of the region. Toward that end, we persistently pursue an independent and self-reliant foreign policy, diversify our international relations, and actively engage in international integration. As a responsible member of the international community, we uphold multilateralism and international law, especially the principles of peaceful settlement of disputes and respect for other countries' sovereignty and legitimate interests. We believe that constructing any Indo-Asia-Pacific regional architecture is a complex undertaking. For them to be beneficial to peace, security, and prosperity in the region, such architectures need to embody following fundamental elements. First, regional architectures must be of inclusive nature. In today's globalized world, where the interests of nations increasingly interdependence, traditional and non-traditional security challenges have become ever more diverse and complex. They can only be addressed by regional architectures that are built upon the principles of openness, inclusivity, peace, cooperation, and development. Second, the regional architectures must be based on the principles of international law that, among others, include freedom of navigation and unimpeded trade flow. As a literal state and party to UNCLOS, Vietnam believes that full compliance with UNCLOS by all state parties is the cornerstone of the rules-based order at sea and indispensable for peaceful settlement of maritime disputes. Third, we believe that ASEAN centrality is key to any regional architecture. The past 50 years has seen ASEAN growing into a strong regional organization whose role and relevance are recognized internationally. Earlier this month, ASEAN foreign ministers in Singapore reiterated our commitment to uphold ASEAN centrality and solidarity in tackling regional issues. And fourth, all cooperations and connectivity initiatives should be undertaken on the basis of respecting the independent sovereignty of nations, conducive to confidence building as well as promoting mutual benefits. We have recently seen a wide range of such initiatives as the Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership, India's East policy, China's Belt and Road Initiative, and the US and Japan's Free and Open Indo-Pacific Strategy. I believe that in order to offer sustainable benefits, projects within these initiatives must be based on the supremacy of international law and respect for the self-determinations of nations. As for Vietnam, our bilateral relationship with other countries always have a regional dimension. Our efforts to expand comprehensive cooperation with other countries in the region aim to contribute to the maintenance of peace, stability, cooperation, and development in the region and the world. I'm confident that deeper integrations and connectivity shall continue to be a new driver that bring relations between Vietnam and the countries in the Pacific and Indian Oceans to new heights. Let me conclude by thanking the organizers for giving me the opportunity to speak to this special gathering of distinguished regional politicians, policymakers, and scholars. I hope you will have productive days of discussions where you openly and candidly exchange your ideas on these subject matters. I wish the Third Indian Ocean Conference a great success. I thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Minister, for highlighting the ocean countries as a unifying force in the region. Thank you very much. I now have the honor of inviting His Excellency Ranil Wickremesinghe, Prime Minister, Sri Lanka, to deliver his address.
His Excellency Pham Binh Minh, Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Foreign Affairs, Vietnam. His Excellency Upendra Yadav, Deputy Prime Minister and Minister for Health and Population, Nepal. Her Excellency Srimati Sushma Swaraj, External Affairs Minister of India. His Excellency Dr. Vivian Balakrishnan, Minister of Foreign Affairs, Singapore. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, it is indeed a great pleasure to be back in Vietnam, a country steeped in a rich history of defiance of spirit, an unbreakable will, and a strong and resilient people. Vietnam in ancient times was a bustling trading hub, deeply connected with the outside world. It was also integral to the creation of cross-current of people, goods and ideas across the Asian lands and seas. The UNESCO World Heritage Site, Maison Sanctuary, which dates back from 4th century CE, located in central Vietnam, close to the ancient port city of Hoi An, is an exceptional example of cultural interchange, with an indigenous society adapting to external cultural influences, notably the Hindu art, religion, and architecture of the Indian subcontinent. Historical texts also reveal that Funan Kingdom, which is said to have comprised parts of Cambodia, Vietnam, Malay Peninsula, stood as one of the most powerful kingdoms of Southeast Asia, ruled by Kaundinya, a Hindu Brahmin, and Queen Soma. There are parallels we can draw with the Indian Ocean region. This region has for many decades resisted domination by a single power. It has been the lifeline of ancient trading routes. It has also continued to remain a melting pot of civilizations, religions, and cultures, while retaining its essentially multipolar character. It's only appropriate, therefore, that the third edition of the Indian Ocean Conference, IOC 2018, be held here. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, the Indian Ocean region is set to define the destiny of the planet in the 21st century. At the center of this geopolitical turn of events is the Indian Ocean, an ocean which is increasingly be defined as the ocean of the future. In addition, the linkages between the Indian and Pacific Oceans are envisaged to create a maritime superhighway that can bring prosperity to all. Those who traversed this great ocean for millennia, the traders, the explorers, the philosophers, and religious teachers left behind ideas that were merged with our own thinking and began to take a uniquely Indian ocean character. In the littorals, you will find, therefore, the harmonious blend of Eastern and Western thinking, systems and approaches. It is in this milieu that a new world order is beginning to take shape. The littorals, by geographic design, are integral partners in this process. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, I want to highlight 5 main global trends that I believe are critical turning points. These turning points will dictate how economic prosperity and development will be dispersed globally. It will also determine the new world order. Firstly, the world order has become more fragile, polarized and unpredictable. Multilateral frameworks are increasingly under pressure. The ability of the collective to manage interdependence effectively is at risk. The weakening of state structures and the diffusion of power to non-state actors is creating a complex international environment. The multilateral system's ability to deliver development and growth is being questioned. Movement in multilateral trade negotiations in particular have faced significant challenges. However, for small countries, there is great value in the idea of sovereign equality of states. It allows us to have a voice in how the world should be shaped. It also allows us to derive benefits from a system of trade and governance for the welfare of our people. The multilateral system advocates temperance, a quality of which the world governance system has effectively functioned in the past few decades. Therefore, the challenges facing a more fragile multilateral system can be highlighted as the first turning point. Secondly, we are seeing a pushback against globalization. Trade tensions between economic giants pose significant risk to global trade. The challenges facing the Trans-Pacific Partnership, the renegotiation of NAFTA, the Brexit negotiation, name but a few. The question is, are these signs of a retreat from a closer integration? Globalization and closer economic integration has helped countries across the globe to develop and prosper. Without such integration and market access, it would be difficult for a small nation like my own, which flow open market policies, to survive. This turning point is closely linked to the future of the multilateral system. For instance, the success or failure of the Doha Development Agenda will demonstrate whether countries continue to value common rules and standards and are willing to remain engaged in such a process. Thirdly, there is a growing strategic rivalry and military build-up across the globe, spilling onto the ocean space. This is the space in which the next great game will take place. There is competition to build spheres of influence and create overarching architectures, and new strategic order appears to be in the offing. There is an abiding interest in maintaining the safety and security of the sea lanes of communication. In the ocean space, you see force posture, build-up of naval and air facilities, and the establishment of military bases. The expansion of military presence of major and middle powers in the ocean space highlights the centrality of the oceans to future development. With such development, these players stand poised to take advantage of strategic opportunities or step into any perceived power vacuums. The geopolitical revolution of the rise of Asia in both political and economic terms can be termed the fourth turning point. The global economy hereto dominated by the West will be driven by new actors. China is projected to be the largest economy in the world by 2050, accounting for 20% of the world's GDP, with India in second place and Indonesia in fourth. In the period 2017 to 2050, Vietnam, India and Bangladesh have been identified as the three world's fastest growing economies. Economic cooperation has become another area of Indian Ocean geopolitics. Nevertheless, what many see as competition in the development field, the host countries treat as complementary. It is important to identify complementariness from the host country's perception as to their own needs for economic infrastructure, FDI, and trade access. A better way to meet these needs is to welcome such initiatives for economic cooperation as important drivers of Asian growth. Furthermore, the ongoing discussions between ADB, AIIB, BRICS must focus on building synergies for growth is an important development. The activation of the Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership, which my friend referred to, will also serve as a catalyst for economic integration in Asia. It would be important for BIMSTEC to have a closer engagement with ASEAN on Bay of Bengal trade development. Deepening interaction and integration within the Gulf and East African states are equally important. The fifth turning point is the rise of multi-layered regionalism, differing in range of scale, scope, and membership in the Indo-Pacific. These frameworks are attempting to create large economic areas with multiple new regional leaders driving this process, giving rise to a truly multipolar world. The Comprehensive Progressive Agreement for Trans-Pacific Partnership, the Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership, the Free Trade Area of Asia and Pacific, BRICS, and the Belt and Road Initiative, to name but a few. There is renewed in regional constructs that go beyond economic interests and spill over to political, defense, security, and strategic domains. Here too, regional constructs have tended to steer clear from directly engaging and grappling with these issues, focusing instead on improving trade, connectivity, people-to-people contacts, and social and cultural ties. There is renewed acknowledgement of the intrinsic linkage between economic prosperity, security, and stability. Another aspect of this multi-layered framework is the rise of maritime regionalism. The multi-layered regionalism of the future should push for inclusivity rather than exclusivity and be built amongst countries unrestrained by geographic or other constraints. The multipolar world of the future would be anchored by multi-layered regionalism and be built on common understandings, alliances, and institutions that are currently taking shape. Maritime Asia and the Indian Ocean region are central to the rise of multi-layered regionalism. These 5 global trends will have a significant impact on how the world will be shaped in years to come. Excellencies, ladies, and gentlemen, peace and stability in the Indian Ocean region is our mutual interest. This region has enormous economic potential and is the lifeline of global trade. Given its geostrategic and geoeconomic significance, the region is constantly being defined and redefined along sub-regional, pan-regional, and super-regional lines. The concept of the Indo-Pacific is a case in point. The Indo-Pacific does not yet have an accepted identification of its territorial limits with the economic and military rise of Asia. Common geopolitical issues have risen. The Indian Ocean trade is vital for both for the United States. The Indo-Pacific stretches from west coast of the United States to the west coast of India and is combined economic and security vision. Prime Minister Modi described the Indo-Pacific concept recently as a natural region with the Asian countries as the main connect between the two oceans in both geographic and civilizational sense. He also stressed that the Indo-Pacific should stand for a free, open, inclusive region that encompasses those that are located geographically in the region and those who have stake in it. Both Japan and Australia have also spoken in terms of a free and open Indo-Pacific. The Belt and Road Initiative spearheaded by China is also gathering momentum. In this context of super-regional construct, what is the role of the Indian Ocean littorals? Where do we stand? And in fact, do we need to take a stand? Both constructs of opportunities for development for littoral states. Super-regional construct should not compel the littoral states to choose or take sides. Such constructs should be inclusive and open. They should also be conscious of the aspirations and preferences of the region's own approaches when being consolidated. The littoral states and the stakeholders must participate in deciding any new regional architecture being proposed. The role of the littoral states in managing great power rivalry and competition is an important one. Within any new construct being proposed, including the Indo-Pacific, the Indian Ocean must maintain its own distinct identity. Even during World War II, there were two commands: Southeast Asia with British accepting the surrender, and the Pacific with America accepting the surrender. These commands, however, did not work in isolation. It is our view that in order to uphold order, mechanisms for cooperation need to be explored. Certain cooperation constructs have emerged, such as the Quad, which is weighted towards the Pacific and has no input from littoral states. The other option is to strive at an arrangement where littoral states can actively participate and contribute. For example, the arrangements such as the CGPCS and the CMF worked well to suppress Somalia piracy. IONS, Shangri-La Dialogue, naval exercises, trilateral maritime security cooperation between India, Sri Lanka and Maldives, and our own Galle Dialogue are important fora which provide opportunities for networking of the security communities at strategic and operational level. We also believe there is a significant need for the Indian Ocean regionalism that focuses on augmenting cooperation across the maritime domain. Such regionalism should strive to create closer linkages between ASEAN, IRO, and BIMSTEC, given the rising imperative for cooperation that spans the entire Indian Ocean. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, China's economic expansion has led to a specific focus on the Indian Ocean. The Indian Ocean sea routes are vital to the economic interests of China. USA has been in the Indian Ocean since Diego Garcia and has been a key stakeholder. A free and open ocean is vital to Japan and its economy. India is the territorial power with a direct stake in the Indian Ocean. Security and economic challenges arise from both complementary and competing interests of these large stakeholders as they interact with each other in the Indian Ocean region. The geopolitics of the Gulf can also spill over and impact on the Indian Ocean trade. Littoral states, especially the smaller states, oppose domination of the Indian Ocean by the great powers. Such states have an important role to play in managing great power competition. Regional constructs that exist were constituted prior to these new developments. They lack the capacity to respond to this situation. The preference is for a rules-based order in the Indian Ocean that benefits all. Sri Lanka has been deeply involved in developing ocean governance process since the time of the negotiation of the United Nations Conference on Law of the Sea. Located as we are in the center of the Indian Ocean, Sri Lanka has significant interest in actively contributing to events that are currently unfolding in the region. Our geostrategic location includes Trincomalee, one of the finest deep sea harbors in the world. Trincomalee is also the second largest natural harbor in the world. Historical incidents have demonstrated that Sri Lanka's location can impact on the security, not only of the Indian Ocean, but also other areas such as Southeast Asia, Middle East, and even the Pacific. Sri Lanka's initiative on freedom of navigation in the Indian Ocean is primarily aimed at maintaining a rules-based order. Our aim is not to draft a new code, but to initiate a process. Our purpose is to create a platform for dialogue where Indian Ocean littoral states and major maritime users are able to convene and discuss issues of mutual interest and concern. It is always important to anticipate challenges and work towards practical solutions based on UNCLOS, which continues to serve as the constitution of the seas. Towards this end, we will be hosting a Track 1.5 dialogue in Colombo on the 11th and 12th of October 2018 on the theme, The Indian Ocean Defining Our Future. This Track 1.5 dialogue is a lead up to a multilateral diplomatic conference which we hope to hold in 2019 with the aim of developing a common understanding among Indian Ocean littoral states and major maritime users. We look forward to your support for Sri Lanka's initiative. Resolving these issues concerned, we speed up the process of multi-stakeholder dialogue in the Indian Ocean region. As we progress through these fora, let's aim for deeper discussion, which should ultimately facilitate a common understanding and decision-making amongst the multi-stakeholders with an interest in the Indian Ocean region. It's important for the Indian Ocean littorals to take the lead in this process. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, I see all these developments include the Indian Ocean conferences that have been held thus far in Singapore and Sri Lanka, and the one being held today in Vietnam as important forerunners and complementary exercises. The fourth Indian Ocean Conference can be one where we endeavor to move from generalization to specific modalities of cooperation. Intra-sessional meetings will prepare us for this next conference. The Indian Ocean is the ocean of the future. It constitutes cultures emanating from ocean-based civilizations and colonial era systems, practices and values which are compatible with international standards and norms. Regional institutes, as presently constituted, lacks capacity to effectively respond to the geopolitical development of the region. Any new regional architecture envisaged should be multi-layered and must recognize the distinct identity of the Indian Ocean region and the integrated role the new regional architecture must also be multi-stakeholder and therefore include the littoral states and those with an interest in the region. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, to my mind, this is a critical juncture in global history. International relations of the future will be determined in a more maritime and Asia-centric world. The rise of East also tells a unique opportunity for Asia to introduce its own model of international relations underpinned by maritime salience of the Indian Ocean region, its civilizational traditions and historical circumstances. Indian Ocean trade networks date back to over 3,000 years, and the people of Asia were connected by seagoing commerce centuries before the arrival of the Europeans. These robust trade routes with ships plying were unique in that neither nationality, race, religion, nor culture were an issue when it came to trade. Voyagers across the Indian Ocean went to the Southeast Asia and the Far East, and westward to the African, European, and Mediterranean regions. There were no obstacles to travel or trade. These ancient trade routes clearly epitomized the idea of freedom of navigation and rules-based order. Recreating the open and free spirit of trade and commerce that existed in ancient times across the Indian Ocean would be of benefit for global trade and maritime Asia in particular. Should this not be a unique contribution to the new global order? The spirit of maritime trade and commerce that is inclusive, plurilateral, stabilizing and rules-based, and one which empowers the littoral and gives them their due place as direct stakeholders. We are living in transformational times. The future generations depend on us to make the right choices. We can create a world where strategic mistrust and competition are allowed to reign. Alternatively, we can rise above rivalry and antagonism and work together, recognizing that when we do so, we can derive greater benefits for the welfare of our people. Before us is a unique opportunity to create a fair, equitable, and a prosperous world that leaves no one behind. We should seize this moment. I thank you.
Thank you, His Excellency, for an inspiring address, setting the roadmap for global trends for ocean countries. Thank you, Honorable Prime Minister. We have a small ceremony to honor the distinguished dignitaries and excellencies. May I request Honorable Sushma Swaraj, Madam, to present a memento to the Honorable Prime Minister, Shri Ranil Wickremesinghe, who is Prime Minister Sri Lanka, as well as Chairman of the Organizing Committee of Indian Ocean Conference 2018. Honorable Pham Binh Minh, Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Foreign Affairs, Vietnam, and Vice Chair of the Organizing Committee of the conference. His Excellency Upendra Yadav, Deputy Prime Minister and Minister for Health and Population, Nepal. His Excellency Dr. Vivian Balakrishnan, Minister for Foreign Affairs, Singapore, and Vice Chair of the Organizing Committee of Indian Ocean Conference. May I request Honorable Prime Minister, His Excellency Ranil Wickremesinghe, to honor Madam Sushma Swaraj. May I request the dignitaries, before we close the session, we do have the vote of thanks by Shri Shaurya Doval, Member, Board of Governors, India Foundation.
Namaskar. On behalf of the Board of Governors of India Foundation and our partner organizations, may I propose a vote of thanks. I would like to thank the dignitaries on the stage for their valuable time today. It is with your support and guidance that we are growing from strength to strength. We are honored to be here in Hanoi to host the 3rd edition of the Indian Ocean Conference. These discussions over today and tomorrow will help us build a consensus on how we as an Indian Ocean community operate and grow together. We hope our engagement with our delegates from 43 countries will become wider and deeper with each round of this conference. I thank all the delegates who are here from far and wide. With this, thank you all, ladies and gentlemen. May I now request my colleagues to escort the dignitaries to the head table. Thank you. I have a small administrative announcement that I've been told to make, that would all the vegetarians on the left side of the room please make way to the right side of the room, because the dinner is being, vegetarian dinner is being served on the right side. I'll just...
A small announcement about the minister's session tomorrow morning to begin at 9 o'clock. May I request all the guests and the delegates to be here by 8:45. The inaugural dinner this evening is hosted by His Excellency Honorable Pham Binh Minh, Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Foreign Affairs, Vietnam. He will raise a toast for the Indian Ocean Conference. Okay. मैं ले लूँगी।
Chiki.